Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. So recently I created a video teaching you how to create an onboarding application in Adobe Experience Design. In that video, I have this example that you see right here of this nice animation, and I asked you guys if you wanted to see an advanced tutorial on that in Adobe After Effects. You guys said yes, so that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to create multiple compositions and piece it together in a final composition like this. Link for the project files in the description. Let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is go to my composition and go to the settings and that, and I'm just going to rename this example so we don't get this mixed up with any of our compositions that we're going to be creating. So just Command N on the keyboard, and that will bring up your composition settings for a new composition, and I'm just going to call this one Background Faces, and that's going to be the faces that are in the background floating around. And my composition is for a iPhone 6-7 Plus. It's the same size as an Adobe Experience Design artboard at 414 by 736, 30 frames and 6 seconds. Let's get started. So I'm going to drag in a image that's going to be in the background of this just so we can get the position on all of our elements. So we'll lock that for now. And I'm going to go ahead and drag in all of my face images. Once I have all of those in my document, I'm just going to place them in the correct positioning. To get them close to exact, I'm going to use my arrow keys just to put them in the right place. Okay, so now that I have all of those in the correct position, I'm going to go down and unlock this layer and just delete it. So now all we have in this composition is our faces. So if we go back to our example and I pan through here, you'll see the faces kind of float around, and then once the swipe begins, they all animate off the screen. So at 1 second it starts, and at about 1:15 it's going to end. So let's go ahead and add that motion, and then we'll add kind of the wiggle they're doing. So at 1 second, I'm going to select all of our faces, and I'm going to press P for the position, and I'm going to click the stopwatch on all of them. And then at 1 minute and 15 frames, and by the way, if I say seconds, I mean frames. I mess that up a lot. It's very hard to remember to say that. So I'm saying 1 minute and 15 frames, not seconds. So at 1 minute and 15 frames, I'm just going to start dragging them off the screen one by one. So we'll put one over here, over there. So if they're closer to one of the edges of the artboard, just drag it that direction. So this one's kind of close this way, so we'll drag it over here and kind of drag them at an angle for a more cool looking effect. So if I pan through now, we have this. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of our keyframes. So I'm just going to drag and select them all. I'm going to click this icon for the graph editor, and I'm going to select all of these. Down here, this button's going to turn this to Easy Ease, and then I'm just going to select this handle and drag it all the way over so that we have a nice quick to slow taper there. So I'm going to get out of the graph editor. I'm going to press P to collapse all of that. And we can just play this, and we'll see they just slide off the screen. So now we need to make them float around randomly while they're sitting here waiting to be swiped off the screen. One thing to note before we apply this effect is going to continue after these are out of frame. So make sure that you have them a little bit of distance away from the viewable area, or else they might wiggle back into frame. So I just quickly drag these a little bit further out so that we don't have any problems with that. So let's go ahead and go to the Effects tab and just type in Wiggle, and here you see I have Wiggle Position selected. I'm just going to drag that to one of the faces, and I'm going to set this to 0.1 on the speed, and the distance it can travel, let's just set that to 20. That will ensure that it doesn't wiggle too far. And I'm just going to select Wiggle Position and Transform, copy those, and just go through and paste them onto all of our faces really quickly here. And I think I got all of them. Just going to double check. Yep. Okay, so if I just pan through, you can see they barely wiggle and then they swipe off. So I'm going to zoom in on some of these so you can see a little bit better. They do move around slightly. That's all I want for this effect. You can change how fast they move and how far they move by these two sliders right here. So that's all we need to do to the background faces. So let's move on to the next composition. Command end, and we'll just call this one main underscore faces. And I'm going to drag in my image again, and I'm going to align this centered, and we'll just lock this for now. And what we're going to need to do is drag in our remaining 3 faces. I already have them imported, and then we just need to align their position up correctly. So we'll drag them into position. Once our 3 faces are in position, I'm just going to unlock and delete the background image. So we have this. So if we go back to our example and I pan through, you can see that they fade out to a white circle, they merge into one, fade back in as a camera, and then we have this little blue bubble pop up that has the number 3 in it. So we're going to be doing all of that in this composition. So let's go back. So for this effect, what we need to do is select all the layers and press Command D, and that will duplicate them. Just to keep this nice and organized, I'm going to drag the duplicates down to the bottom. So we have 1, 2, and 3 up top, and then let's just rename each one of these to face underscore 01 solid, and I'll do the same thing for this one, face underscore 02 underscore solid. And on the last one, face underscore 03 underscore solid. And since those are at the back, what we're going to do is apply a fill to those. So under the effects tab, I'm just going to type in fill and drag a fill onto this one. Make sure it's at 100% opacity and set the color to white. So if I hide all 3 of our original images, you'll see this one is now white. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this, Command C to copy it, and I'm going to paste the same solid fill onto all 3 of them. So now basically they're white circles. So if we turn all of our images back on, they're now hidden behind. So that we don't have to animate this twice, we're just going to link these together. So face 1 solid, drag this pinwheel to the face, and on face 2 solid, drag this to the second face, and then for the third, do the same thing. So now when one of them moves, they both move. So all we have to do is animate the face images and the solids follow them. So before we begin merging these 3 shapes together, what we need to do is add a camera photo to this circle. So I'm going to drag one out, and I'm going to rename the layer so it's not confusing, just a cam. I'll drag it down to the bottom, and I'm going to hold Shift, actually Command, and I'm going to select the face 1, press P, and I'm going to copy the position and paste that into each one of the values of our camera. Once that is done, I'm going to press P to collapse that, and I'm going to drag the pinwheel on the camera back up to face 1. And let's just put the camera right below face 1 since it follows it anyway. And so what this is going to do is, if I go back to my example, you'll see that all 3 start in their original position. So this one's right here. It's going to come down to the center, and the rest are going to merge into it, and then the camera image is going to show up. So that's where the camera image is actually coming from. So let's start adding the motion now. So that it's easier to see, I'm actually going to change the color of our faces to red. So those are the things we're really going to be keyframing. So I'm going to select all of them and press T for opacity. At 1 minute, I'm going to click the stopwatch to set keyframes. And then after 5 frames, I'm going to turn them down to 0% opacity so that they fade out over time. You'll notice that this top one fades into a camera. That is because the camera is currently visible. So I'm going to press T on that layer and set it down to 0 by default. And then we can just collapse all of our layers. Now at 1 minute and 5 frames, we're going to start animating these. So I'm going to animate face 1 first. So I'm going to press P for the position and set a keyframe. At 1 minute and 20 frames, our animation is going to end. So I'm just going to drag this to roughly the center. I'll go to the Align tab and center it up to the composition. And I'll just kind of place this around there. I can even drag in an image of my final screen just to get a good idea. Let's drag this down here to the bottom. You'll see it's a little off, so I'm going to go further down. About right there looks good. I'll just delete that image. So that's the final position for this circle. So let's go ahead and do the other 2. So I'm going to collapse this one, and I'll just grab both of them, press P. set in a keyframe, and then at 1 minute and 20 frames, I'm just going to drag these into the center. They should snap right in like that. And then we have something like this. So now that we have that, let's animate the opacity on the camera. So just T for opacity. And at 17 frames, I'm going to start this. So I'm going to press the stopwatch. And we're going to go all the way to around 25. Let's go 24 frames actually. And I'm going to set that to 100. So that'll kind of fade in as it moves just over time. I think it looks a lot better than it just being in its final position and then animating in. So that looks good. And what we need to do from here is we need to apply that kind of fluid effect. So let me go to my example, and you'll see when they merge, they kind of connect to each other like that. We need to apply that. So we're going to do that through an adjustment layer. So if you've been wondering why I've been separating all of these solids down to the bottom, it's so we can easily just select the top one, go to Layer, New, and Adjustment Layer. So now we can adjust these bottom 3 solids without interfering with these up here. So on this adjustment layer, I'm going to go to my effects and presets, and I'm going to type in fast blur. And I'm just going to drag that in and apply it to the adjustment layer. For the blurriness, I'm going to set this to 25. And then we need to right click and go down to simple choker, and we can put that at 25 to match that. So we have that. You'll notice that our circles are fading into smaller circles, and that is because the choker takes off 25 from the overall diameter. So we need to fix the size of these circles to match our images once more. But now we have that nice fluid effect. So let's go down here and select all 3 of these and just press S for the scale. And I'm going to select the first solid, and I'm just going to scale it up. And once it gets too large, you'll see that it's like visible. So I'm just going to go down until I can't see it, and I'm just going to kind of find that good even spot. Around 120 for that one. Then on this one, I'm going to do the same thing. So here I can see it. I'm going to go in until I can't. And it's around 135. And I'll just apply that to the other one since they're the same size. And that should fix it. So let's go through. And when they fade out, they look the same size. So there we go. And then as they merge, our camera becomes visible. So we have our animation. So let's click the preview play here. And they merge together. I just quickly added a yellow color to this so you can see where things are being separated for the adjustment layer. Now I'm just going to add in that little 3 that pops up here in the corner. Just going to drag that image in, and we'll position that align with the top of this and just over a bit. The last animation ends at 1 minute and 24 frames. So I'll just hit S to bring up the scale, hit the stopwatch, set it to 0, and then we'll just go forward a few frames. 1 minute and 29 frames, and set it to 100. So that is going to make that little thing pop up in the corner. So we can play this, they connect, and there it is. Okay, so we've done a lot of pieces to the animation, so let's start to piece it together a little bit. So I'm just going to press Command N, and we'll just call this animation, and just press OK. And we're just going to drag in some of the things we've been working on. So we have background faces. I'll find that one and drag that in, and make sure that's right at the beginning. And then we need main faces. Drag that one in. And we'll make sure that one's above the background faces, of course. Let's go ahead and add our background to this to make it look a little better. So I'm just going to drag in the background image. I'll go to the Align tab and align that centered. Drag it to the back, and we can just lock it. And let's go ahead and add the status bar in as well. I'll just make sure that's up top. And we'll align that to the top edge. And we can lock that one. So it's coming together. Next thing we need is our text down here at the bottom. And I'm just going to kind of group those together in another composition. So Command N, and we'll just call this text_01. Just to stay a little bit organized, I'm going to drag animation completely on the right so we know where it's at. So for the text, I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing. Just drag in the one image here, and we're just going to add the text and make sure it's in the correct position. So text 1, I just have this in an image that I exported from Adobe Experience Design. I'm just going to line that up. For the dots, we'll just create a circle holding shift. It's a little big, so I'll go to the scale and drop it down a little bit. My center point is over here, so we'll just drag that in. Again, Y to be able to move the center point. And go back to my selection tool with V. We'll just duplicate this. Line those up, and then we can align these center together. And then on the second one, I'm going to drop the opacity down to 50%. So if we hide our image, we have that. We just need this little icon over here. And I'm actually going to grab that and these two circles and align those to the selection centered. And we can turn off our background image. And that's all we need for our text. So we can delete the background image. So we can add this piece to the animation. So just drag in text_1, and I'll put it above background faces. So that's the entire app screen done. So now what we need to do is when everything starts animating, this text needs to swipe off and the next text needs to swipe over. So Command in, and we're just going to call this one text_02. All I'm going to do here is replace the text and change the dots opacity. So if we go back to our animation, we can select text_2, drag that one in, and put that one below the first text. I'm just going to hold shift and push the right arrow key so I get that off of the screen so that we can later animate that. Okay, so before we animate this text, we do need to animate the circles that appear after the faces in the background slide out. There's some circles that appear in the background here. So I'm just going to create a new composition, and I'm going to call this background circles. I actually misspelled that, I think. Let's go to composition settings. There we go. I'm going to drag in that second finished image of our app and center it up. I'll lock it so we can't drag it around. With the ellipse tool selected, I'm just going to create a smaller circle, and I'm just going to drag it into position. Pressing Y, I'm going to grab that center point and put it back into position. Make sure you have snapping again. I know we turned that off earlier. So I'm just going to press Command D to duplicate this, and I'm going to drag it into different positions. I'm just going to press S on the keyboard to expand this to scale and just change the sizing on these to match my image. In my effects, I'm going to grab that wiggle position and just add it to the top one. On this one, we're going to do 0.3 speed. I want these to move just a little bit faster. And then we'll apply 20 to the amount of wiggle. I'm going to copy both of those and paste them on each one of these. So let's select all of them and drop the opacity T. Let's do 5%. That looks good. And I'll just collapse all of those layers, and then we'll unlock and delete the background. At 1 minute and 25 frames, I'm going to set a position keyframe. So this is going to be where the animation is going to end on these, since they are coming in from the sides. So I'll set a keyframe. At 1 minute and 10 seconds, I'm just going to scatter them around off the screen. So just like we did the faces, keep them at an angle, no like straight lines like this. You want to avoid that. And if they're close to a certain edge, just drag it off that edge. Make sure they're not close enough to wiggle back on the screen accidentally, so we'll just drag them way off here. And then I'm going to select all of these keyframes, go to the graph editor, select them all, easy ease, and we'll just drag this handle all the way over, just like we did for the background faces. I'm going to collapse all those layers, and if we play this, we'll see them animate on, and then they'll just start to wiggle around. To set up for our animation, I'm going to go back in the animation tab. Under my project tab, I'm going to find our background circles that we just created. I'm going to drag that in. Now I'm just going to drag this above the background faces, and it should line up with our animation and work just fine. So we'll play this. Everything slides off, and they slide in and start wiggling around. In our animation composition, at 1 minute, we're going to add our text animation. So I'm going to expand text 01 and text 02 completely. So let's do text 1 first. So on text 1, what we're going to do is drop the opacity. So I'm going to set a keyframe on the opacity. And that's going to go to the 6th frame. So I'm going to pan over to the 6th frame and set that to 0. Then I'm going to go to 1 second and set a keyframe on position. And that is going to go to the 15th frame. So on the 15th frame, we're going to have this completely off of the edge of the screen. So I'm going to hold shift and use my arrow keys and push that all the way off. So if we play that, you'll see it slides off and disappears at the same time, which is exactly what we want. For the second set of text, we need that to slide in. So at the 7th frame, I'm going to set a positional keyframe, and at the 24th frame, it is going to end up coming to the center. So I'm going to go to the Align tab and center that just like that. For the opacity, we're going to go to the 17th frame, set a keyframe, and set it to 0. And then at the last frame, which was 1 minute and 24 frames, I'm going to set it to 100. So when it lines to the center, it's going to become 100% opacity. So if I play this, we'll have it slide off and slide in. Okay, so that's that entire swipe done. If you want to make it loop back and forth between the first page and the second page of swiping, I'm going to show you how to do that now. So just create a new composition and call it animation_full or whatever you want, and just drag in the animation composition. At 3 seconds, Command-Shift-D will separate it, delete the end of it, Command-D to duplicate it, and just drag it over and line it up into position. Right-click on that layer, go to Time Reverse Layer, and if I play this, it will just completely reverse the first animation, and it will all swipe back. Also, if you guys want to add that swipe animation where this little circle swipes back and forth with the animation, I have a tutorial for that, so I won't get into that today. Just click the card that's up here on the top of the screen, and you guys can go and watch that video and learn how to create that as well and add that to the rest of your animations in the future. That's it for this animation tutorial. I hope that wasn't confusing. I broke it up into multiple compositions so that you guys can see the different effects and how they work. I didn't want to include this all in one composition just because it would be too many layers and too messy, and it would be very hard to follow. So I hope that was easy enough to follow, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know by clicking the like button down below. Subscribe for more UI related content, and as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. On the left is my previous video, just in case you missed it. On the right is YouTube's recommendation just for you, and the top center icon is my channel icon. Click that to subscribe for more content just like this. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.